So before I start, I'd just like to say a quick couple thank yous. First to Black Debate, DB, DSRB, Charles, Tyler Anderson, Brooke Kimbrough, Black coaches from other squads like Chris Rendo and Joe Ariano. I really appreciate all of you. Second, North Broward Fine Arts, Shri, Kagan, Mr. Matruzzi, you all have been really supportive and really great. Third, our coaches, Jeff, Zahir, Allison. Even though sometimes the arguments you make for us don't really help us in debates, it's really just great having you all around to just like have good vibes, and I really appreciate that. Also to the debate team, North Broward, Tyler, Drew, Grant, Benny, Anna, Akash, Tyler, and Daniel. You all are really amazing, and I really appreciate that. The UM debate team, Aaron, DML, Val, Kurt, Kevin, and GW, thank you for all the support, all the extra help, cards, and whatever. That's also been really helpful. I'd like to thank my family. They forced me into this activity, and I decided to stick with it, and I could not be more thankful that I'm in it now. Nick, we've been best friends since we were 2. I can't believe that this will be my last debate with you, but I really appreciate everything you've done. You've been the best partner. You're going to do amazing at Dartmouth. And yeah, finally, last and most importantly, thank you to the Black people across the community that have helped me grow, particularly the Black girls who always keep me thinking on my feet. Lynn, Raven, Dee Dee, Asia, Ariana, Jada, and Ayana. Thank you so much. The one he says on paper, it will be sent after.
Nigga, real nigga, rich nigga, poor nigga, house nigga, field nigga, still nigga. My name is still nigga.
I am a racial optical illusion. I am as visually duplicitous as the illustration of the young beauty that's also the illustration of the old hag. Whoever sees the beauty will always seize the beauty, even if the image of the hag can be pointed out to exist in the same etching. Whoever sees the hag will be equally resolute. The people who see me as white always will and will think it's madness that anyone else could come to any other conclusion, holding to this falsehood regardless of learning my true identity. The people who see me as black cannot imagine how a sane, intelligent person could be so blind not to understand this despite my pale skin presence. The only influence I have over this perception, if any, is the initial encounter. Here's my chance to be categorized as black, with an asterisk. The asterisk is my whole body. I'm conscious. Confining debates over the immigration to the United States, restriction on admission, a geographic port of entry, mystifying the implicit border of the color line that passes white cultural self-definition as technology of national institution, white populist border, actions enacted unwritten policy to only restrict the immigration runaways to southern plantations, which makes foreign residents free stand use for niggas in the afterlife of slavery. The color line is restriction, enacting an asterisk on legal status, authorized alienation, merit on 7, the immigration implicit borders, the gist of the official border of the nation makes a shadowy appearance because names alienation was psychological for existence of some strange anti-immigrants movement during the 1800s expressed this current of unwanted people not much work taking the job through his son, so lives the country closed this border for targeting running states, so the plantation, the anti-black was success to continue not success to fear that drove white mobs from the enactment of unwritten policy and segregation policy regulations, immigrants seeking freedom, across the purity of American nation, defined by this border was white highlights the distinction between the European immigrants and the black people escaping plantation bondage, dislocation, not come with punishment for black safety only. I found sending safety after arriving at free safe several lives institute of how to outmaneuver white obsession of segregation, segregation of black people, constitute a self-respecting person for black communities with a new articulation of entitlements and such to big existence and profounding and such constitute of violence. So white society boundary of whiteness was much of great importance in the map the porosity of when a boundary durable to be over the month the European immigrant and the immigrant had the option to cross the border by offering to regard the racialized border focus on the national boundary. So the other board, the color line, this is not related, but despite differences in the extent of the border, technology and national existence, both on racialized internal border, our technology of white self-state, official rights, freedom, voting, registration, are all met by white populist defense. The events are even occur in a juridical context that take the form of policing brutality and impunity towards black people exclusions and acted through white populist border actions is the real import of this second white border. Immigration institutions are constituted by a parapolitical United States structured by a cultural association that evokes a coal line to maintain the fragile coherence of a white-led legality and renders niggas open to crude dishonest by denying the immigration status more than takes race responders given a national character that over such culturality, geographic community, these borders and community, especially homological cultural structural relations, social practice, or career, a common understanding is regulated founder of the production of thinking device the proper existence, acceptance, social practice, certain operation levels and see beyond the terms which KO cultural issues that characterize health departments, governments do not constitute cultural institutions or modes of operation constitute institutionalized through white public action, where parapolitical draws some legitimacy for official jurisprudence or authority resulting primarily from recognition by members, cultural associates, South Latinos, racialized black North, black people dying, citizenship in the same way of the purpose of terminology is not to evaluate categories created by two borders, but to question the two borders with respect to reconstituted white coherence minorities belong together to procure the color, race, things of execution of political process to be a minority, so happy voted in advance and anxiety expressly controlled by coherence and hegemony because outside has threatened to step across the border, the color line for which no immigration status will be granted, although black people join parties and votes, they do so assume within white institutional structures. The interweaving of border treats the structural, the interreading of border shows the national border to be structurally institutional from the color line because of our political state acting populace against immigrants, black disenfranchised and moved against the immigration of escaped slaves in the political state to signify the congruence of two border structures of the racialization redefine white racial identity in the face of fragility that requires violence and ethos of person as its first option. Stevens 98 brings above the framework for black identity, which would wage a critique of imperialism, the struggle of reputation of black subject to Bolshevik internationalism. He founded in his inventor at the Federation a plan that would serve as the rudder for the Negroship of the state, governed by a central body of representatives from Negro organizations, federated blackness, sought political and metaphoric ways of imagining a black sovereignty, because this is a new politics of the diaspora. If national status for locally situated black subjects was the goal and global imperialists were the obstacle, black self-determination would occur as transnational. Far from a disengaged state of exile, the alternatives represented a new conception of citizenship and national community. The problem of the century is according to those who vote transnational America, Pan-Africanism as a living, tangible accomplishment, the main seat of leadership to the United States.
All black every day. And I know it's just a fantasy. I cordially invite you to ask, why can it be? Now we can't do nothing about the past.
Van Vaderson 18, the humanist and social science and critical and imaginary urban social public debate of new realities. The Afro-Geos for thinks the black future as a world calls for black political dreamers to call that the consuls contact economic structures nation can be remixed through new utopias. The border of logic we single is probabilization by ways beyond not just the black Atlantic with black mystics, Afro-Asian, Afro-Latin, continuums of message and correlative population historical practice means for just and care of the political computer without race as a formative category itself. Classes self-determined who isn't used as a human subject. Who race matters because of vertically organized is who matters because race class is not transcended but suffused with the culture because collective politics of average sport belonging pure demands reality to demand the impossible be the form an absolute perspective still black lives matter do not create the impossible, which is such imaginative act demand our chief which practice streaming from first borders as a recreation of commonwealth afro future stealing through game jamming where students create games that generate black futures in mind, develop the pedagogical potential of afro future types. Participants connect speculative black futurism to a game-based pedagogy focused on the thinking through imaginative affordances that enables black people in the diaspora to strive for affirmation without hustle environments that are accompanied by slavery. Consider this as an invitation to my gangsta nation niggas. To TOC is not the place to regurgitate the same sophistic framer shell but sets the standard for new knowledge production. Read case 12. What do you think do with scholarship and debate rounds that comes to determine the structural creation of scapegoats, reinforcement, power, shadow about further reduced research of black literature being produced. There's a whole entire library. Performance teams are producing scholarship rather than regurgitating. That's where I think we have gone wrong, which is why we are not able to make debate something that administration wants to support. The reason why we've made it this isolated enclave, the game, that people who are interested in knowledge production do not see their relationship to it. We can do in debate rounds is to change focus from regurgitation of information already produced to producing new knowledge rather than coming to add a plan as I have a solvency advocate and I've defined this in the context of how the use of G is really defined. We should be producing new arguments. So what legal immigration should look like through the use of G. You would have evidence to support to change your argument like academic paper that would change what the game is, what is the connection to the academia, but also politics. Then we can start. Then we can connect final rounds to what's going on in policy institutions.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it right now. My Wi-Fi went out the first time I did it, so I had to reconnect.
Are you taking prep? No, I'm saying like when. I'm saying
no.
Okay, sweet.
Just got it. Good for cross-six?
Yeah.
The Martinon evidence says focusing on the national border and the color line are not unrelated despite differences. How does the 1AC challenge the national border? I understand how you challenge the color line. How do you challenge the first thing?
Because we think that it should not be a problem of the national border, but one of the color line.
Yeah, your ev says they're interrelated. So do you say...
we have evidence that says the color line is definitely more important in this context.
I mean, your ev
Especially
all
in
says they're
relation-
inextricably tied. I guess,
Especially in
at least your ev
relationship-
says it's important to think about the first thing. Is there any way that the 1AC could lead to combating the national boundary?
The national border?
That's what your evidence says.
I don't think, no, we will not claim to solve this.
Okay, so if you can't solve that, and there are intimately interrelated...
Why is the solvency responsibility to have to break down the entire
Like,
border?
when are we
No,
that?
it's not, but I cited an impact.
That's what you... No, we don't have an impact.
I'm
off
quoting
the
your
border.
evidence here.
No,
So
the
I guess
impact
what is the
based off
strategy of the
color.
1AC?
What is the strategy?
Yeah.
All black everything that gives black political agency to black people.
Okay, it's political agency?
Yes.
What is the end point of that?
What is the end point of that? An invitation to my gangsta nation.
Okay, so that is changing the nation itself.
That is, it is an Afrofuturist understanding of what the nation is.
That leads to what?
That leads to an invitation to
Of
my
what?
gangsta nation.
Okay, you're not answering my question. Why did you break new against us?
Why did we break new?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't ask for disclosure.
Okay, that's the order. What is the is it good for us? It seems like you presented a pretty universal claim in the 1AC. Is it good for us to say you're wrong?
It is. Yes, you'd have to disprove.
Also, this
Why is that good?
What do you mean? Why is that good?
Yeah.
Because debate is good.
Okay. So these black futurism arguments, these black futures, what relation do they have to immigration restrictions?
I mean, it's an invitation to my gangsta nation, i.e., we reimagine or Afrofuturist imagine that black people is all black everything.
Yeah, I know. You're not like describing what that means. I'm asking, how does that you've read a lot of evidence about
why do you not know what that means?
What, okay, I guess I'll ask: is your strategy universal for black immigrants?
What do you
Like,
mean
is
universal?
black immigrants seeking
we don't-
status always bad?
No.
No. Okay. So is the 1AC a form of black? Could black immigrants seeking status be a form of the 1AC?
Sure.
Yes. How?
What do you mean it
Okay.
could be a form of?
So it seems
like
as
you're
if-
just like this is what you said. It's like, could black people seeking status be a part of the 1AC?
Yeah, so it seems like the 1AC
it's like
certainly-
if black people outside of the room seek status, like that is like I don't understand.
that is an example of black futures, correct?
I mean, yes, black people can have those features.
Okay, of course. So I guess what should black immigrants do then, or what should we do for black immigrants?
Our evidence says Afrofuturism is good. Black people should.
Yeah. Can you explain how that results in things like reducing detention, like your evidence talks about for black immigrants?
How does that result in reducing
Yeah.
detention?
Do you have
in the world of the Afrofuture, there is no detention. So
Okay, so you skip from imagining to just no detentions. How do you bridge those two things?
Afrofuturism is good.
Okay, so you're not going to explain how you do that?
Well, it's like we don't need to explain how we get rid of
Okay,
detentions
just-
if the world that we imagine does not.
Okay,
have
we're going to say that's
detention.
very important. What does the ballot do besides affirming the 1AC?
Besides affirming
Yeah.
the 1AC, depends what the neg says. Right now, it's
Is there a
debate.
spillover outside of this round?
It's a debate. Well, again, this cross-sex question is predicated off of what the 1AC does.
So your method is based off what we say. That seems very reactionary.
No, the ballot says that the AF is a desirable departure from the status quo.
Okay.
Then if you read a T argument, we'll make arguments about how the ballot is good to do something else.
Okay, we'll take prep 10 minutes. Stop prep. 9:56. Can we borrow y'all stand?
Yeah, I said it.
Oh, you're my ours.
Yo, after this dance.
Yo, Canes?
Canes.
Yo, Canes, man? Spawn off at Canes. Okay. Yeah. Before I send this out, I'd like to say a couple of thanks. Aiden and I would obviously like to offer thanks to Kentucky for the absolutely wonderful weekend. Thank you to everybody at the staff for being absolutely terrific hosts. Congrats to Nick and George on their terrific careers. Obviously, we've had a lot of awesome debates. The fact that we went last year from having debate about whether or not the world's round or flat to this year and becoming good friends, it's been a lot of fun. We'd also like to thank everyone at MBA for supporting us, our headmaster, Mr. Brad Joya, our coaches, Mr. Josh Clark, Mr. Kevin Hamrick, Mr. Robbie Quinn, and Mr. Austin Yorko for making it possible to be here. Also, Lincoln Garrett, Terrell Taylor, Jacob Goldschlag, Ben Rosenthal, Ben Jablonski, and Matt Zhu have been a huge help for us this year. Thank you so much. We thank our parents for supporting us in this career and in debate. Most importantly, thank you to all of our teammates. The seniors this year have been absolutely wonderful with Atticus, Sam Funk, William Bradford, Jack Harrington, Jack Rankin. I couldn't choose to be on a more fun and better debate team to be a part of. Obviously, I'd also like to thank the tournament for all the different forms of support that they have given us. And with all that being said, I'd like to send out the 1NC. Okay, send. Wi-Fi's low slow.
Yeah. That's fine.
Okay, it's sent now.
Oh shit, I forgot. I don't have internet.
No.
It's going to be 2 off in case.
I still haven't gotten it yet, so
No problem.
we're gonna be chilling for a bit. Do you have a hot? Is that your thing or it's mine?
Do y'all want your 1AC back?
You can, yeah, sure.
It's coming out of order.
That's fine.
Is
Alright.
this-
Yeah, you are good.
Both of you good?
Yep.
So you got it?
All the judges good? Great. First off, interpretation of violation, the further dependent of hypothetical implementation of a topical plan. They don't resolve for a colon, reflection less than this Army officers colon 5. The colon introduced a formal resolution after the word resolves for a colon, the council petition to the mayor. The use of G's of federal government and USA based in DC, that's section of government politics 98. The next section of federal government doing based in Washington DC. The text of the resolution calls for a debate in hypothetical governmental action. That's Erickson. And 3, stop contains the key elements including the act in the United States. The verb should urge the action that should adopt a policy intent based on whether something ought to occur. Restrictions on legal immigration include race and quotas and change the for admissibility for the 5 pass bill PR. Prefer topic wording and legal precision. That's task off. And 16, restriction on the immigration quota does limit the number of people in any category of eligibility or from a specific country. Quality restriction of the determined should not be allowed. Participant therapy are broken down to family, employment, refugee, asylees, and diversity. New KS are uniquely bad. Our prep is centered around the resolution and new topical graphs takes away any specific links. It's also disproven all of the you had ground arguments, improves competition, guides every single decision in the debate. They have to prove in the 2AC why they flipped F and why they read off the paper. Vote neg. First is prep and class. Post topic factor changes alter the bounds of prep, but structurally favor the affirmative because they speak last and use permutations. Key to engage a well-prepared advocacy and target mutual conversation. Second is limit. Specific topics are key to reasonable expectation of 2 ends. Open subject create incentives for avoidance, monopolization of moral high ground that denies the role of being negative turns accessibility. Third is refinement. Unlimited topics makes a session of validity. The 1AC's truth claims impossible and causes concessionary ground, which causes incentives for debates. And then debates inevitably include exclusions on content. Make sure that there's exclusion occur on reciprocal lines is necessary to foster democratic habits. That outweighs. That's Anderson 6. Substantive guidance for projects are inherent to reaching understanding and emancipated model of communication. Our reasons derived from the intersubjective, our relational research that burns from percentages to an ongoing moral conversation. We ask not what we could agree on, but what is necessary from the starting point. Our standing point is sustaining conversation, emphasis on less on agreement, but sustain the normal practice within which agreement can flourish. That is valid in the fairness and reciprocity and procedure are necessary conditions. The starting point for reflection, universality is not denying the body identity, but aims to encourage the transformation that yield the view accessible to all. Universality is the process of fairness and reciprocity adjudicate between the different positions, but all do not include those who do forfeit their places equal participants. Universalism sits on inevitable exclusion, but not as a hardwired effect of the claims of exclusiveness or is victimizing those disempowered by race, class, or gender, sexuality. Certain exclusions are required by the principles of recognition that underpin the democratic process. The individual arguments that we read around have no effect on our subjectivity, which means that ballots can't solve any of their offense. However, the process of clash or interpretation facilitates internal link turns all of the actually tied to the resolution incentivizes nuanced research and clash with a well-prepared opponent. They turn the debate into a monologue, which means that arguments are presumptively false until subjected to well-researched scrutiny. Next, on capital accumulation explains the better and disrupting is necessary to avoid extinction. That's Robinson. And 16, patient stagnant economy, at least I managed to turn war, violence, and inequality into opportunity. The crisis is not like the earlier structural crisis. This one's politically becoming systemic level. Global social polarization and inequalities on our precedent. Trumpism illustrates the strategy of co-option and manipulation of fear and insecurity. The social anxiety channel to the scapegoated communities already exceeded the boundaries of climate change and action cycle. Diversity loss acidifies the ocean, undermines their conditions for life in the fascist culture through the militarism, extreme nationalization, racism, and racist mobilization, militarized accumulation, making the war of endless destruction, expanding militarization, global capitalism makes a new system of 21st century unstable possible. Christian labor, switch jobs, and exploited immigrant communities, the population at risk for anxiety, global rebellion against the transnational capitalist cast spread whenever one looks at popular grassroots and left to struggle with the system. Critique on the global capitalism must try to influence the discourse and practice of the movement or survival will depend on it. And for politics, the ONC can place a political with politics issues, the organizing of a broad-based constituency to make demands in order to transform power relations. They only create the simulacra of popular uncertainty. That's Reed and 16. Infant politics is active everyday resistance undertaken by the subordinated population versus the unadmitted group essentialism. Essentialism increased academic capital to those who romanticize everyday resistance to read the evolution of political movements and theologically assume that these conditions led to political action. They don't. The proliferation of theater politics and from the desperation when the wishful thinking that underlies the tendency, the notion that single event or traumatic acts galvanize globalization of restoration, the political significance of protest contribute to the exaggeration of the significance of eruption, the presumption that deeper racial truth guides black politics necessary to the erasure of the historical specificities of political dynamics. The alternatives of politics organizing around the common experience of life shaped by the political economy. That's Panic and 18. Less current conjunction brings up the light the insufficiency of identity. Read, I mean, the case of politics based on the bringing people together around the common experience of life shaped by the political economy. The extent the differences are real. The best way to negotiate them is from the foundation of shared purpose and solidarity based on the pragmatic understanding that entry to one is entry to all, not simply politics on the working class of politics that are crossing the fashion of broadly inclusive class politics, commonplace address the problems by criticizing ontological. This kind of idealism attributes far too much to the historical impact of text seriously inquired into was determined the actual practice affairs uncovered will actually account for the limited contribution to the workers' democratic have as the case. The song that they play is already read. There's no reason why it's radical at all when they've done it in the past. Playing Lupe isn't radical. It's a massively popular song that only gets re-inscribed into the system of capitalism. Treating black people as a unitary actors, authentic perspective, and saying that white people should not be able to invoke black suffrage essentializes black experience and should be rejected. That's Reed and 18. That black Americans are political agents can forge tactical alliances and rule downside black are imagined as abject and leaders of the black authenticity purport to express the black point of view arise from the quasi-mythic black community. The qualification for recognition seems to be indicate inclination to declaim the intractability of ahistorical racism from the race reductionist discount the political agency in the pursuit of alliances. Racism is intractable. It lies beyond the political intervention, leaving us only with individual conversion as a program. Like ensure the treaty problems and the popular support necessary as regards the role of the representative black voices to function as alternative action in order to perform the racial identity that doubles for the appeal of recognition from those when power the directed towards enhancing self-esteem rather than material retribution. The tendency to observe the plural into the singular for the ownership for black suffering, the right to represent the benefit for black suffering. Black contended that non-black people will never understand the claims of cultural ownership, the positive the dead end, conflation, the fiction, the pyramidal racial identity, expressing the discourse of the cultural ownership stems from the mindset that treats the culture as the key marker of the social groups that inscribes it in racial essentialism will never recommend disturbing the presumption that any black person be recognized as expressing the significant racial truth, expressing the unexamined premise that black people are singular mind that's unknowledgeable for non-blacks of the premise of the anti-black list. The fact that their politics is tied to the ballot is uniquely bad is a form of ballot of currency that radicalizes the politics. And the atrocity of the current system demands political organizing, concrete, reasonable immigration policies, accompanied with emotional swear. The only way to persuade voters to mobilize sweeping change, not knowing how to get rid of deportation and relying on futurism low will always fail to the right wing. That's Renix and 17. Just because things are dismal now does not dissolve responsibility to plan for the future. How would you change immigration? Here, not much about substance. We need real reforms that won't be redone in 10 years. We need things strategically that immediately fix problems. How do you rally voters and legislators to care? Any strategy durable long term must, whenever presently anxious, can be swayed not by consensus but through persuasion. Boards not going to go in the near future, so we need to deal with them to retreat feel seriously and realistically as credibility. Better to attack observation, figuring out what policies would be practically effective in avoiding future problems rather than sidetracking metaphysical debates about whether the person has a right to be in the U.S. or not. Organizing national scares extremely hard. Much more the cause working to generate public empathy for people fleeing the bindings of extreme poverty and the document reportedly appears to be a real pessimism. Our ability to change each other's minds. I don't think they're trying very hard. Facts, narrative, and emotion are equally important. Reducing restrictions not to occur through a liberal anti-black frame. The no one's illegal movement proves that fighting for tactical deployment policy disrupt the traditional category of the citizen is possible. It's Miranda and 15. Microjustice politics to the radical potential to undo the border imperialism. Failure of microjustice politics to rest on the racial appropriation of black social movements to stabilize the category of the microjustice politics. Committed to undoing the underlying system of oppression. The radical potential to bring together all the martial rather simply the framework that calls for more kindness. Just politics frames the entire priorities of the root cause of slavery and radical transformative potential realized in this multi-layer approach by organizing our anti-state frameworks. And then I also strategically navigate the city apparatus in order to win tangible victories for those facing deportation and detention. Major policy against platform and one result of these alliances curb immigration enforcement at schools, shelters, and other sites of service providers provide related access to essential services. No one's illegal and says that all human beings are inherently worthy. The policy to legalize human beings are fictions by way of admission. The statement negates the ongoing legacy of enslavement. Migrant justice politics also says that no person is a slave. What started off as explicitly anti-detention, anti-deportation agenda has transformed the intersectional commitment towards decolonization while celebrating victories about the movement chose to the recognition of our mission are mistakes. Liberalism. Should I read that or what?
Palmer.
And removing immigrants on prior removal is the manifestation of the carceral anti-black state. Only targeted organizing can solve through governmental solutions. That's Palmer and 17. Anti-black racism flows my black immigrants into removals in nearly 1 in 3 of non-citizen facing deportation is black more likely to be held in immigration detention. Racism exaggerates avoidability, so black immigrants then reduce visibility within advocacy. JII has issued a list of organizing demands to combat the revolt and removes, including ending the retroactive application of IRA, restoring judicial discretion and due process, ending permanent deportation, disproportionate impact of removal, manifestation of racial inequality in the U.S. Racialized criminal law results in devastating immigration consequences for undocumented black people directly into migrants and large movement for black lives and intersectional activism has been used as links to expand the notions of immigrant reform and racial justice. Intersection of anti-immigrant rhetoric and anti-black racism results in the mass disfranchisement of black and Latino citizens not having proof where they're born. Or the correct mark of proof where they were born.
You good?
Yeah.
Zach Edmonds, it's tagged Futurism Fails. Where does it say the word futurism?
You should flow. We didn't read that card.
I would actually that's the left first. Whatever. Given the 1AC performance at the top, why do we essentialize black people?
Why do we essentialize? We say at the top line of the 1AC, where you say that your form of futurism is the way to remove the tension, is what we know. Is a form of essentialism.
The first card on the read card about like you essentialize black authenticity.
Also, this is to preempt a lot of the 2AC responses to framework in which you assume there's one unitary approach to debate.
Assume there's one unitary.
Yeah. So when the 2AC gets up and says that framework limits out black debate, that's what we will criticize.
Okay.
And also we'll say the 1AC as we explain it more.
Do you agree that there are multiple ways to debate?
Yes. I mean, yes, obviously, but we do say that resolutional debate is the best way to targeting those towards ends over the course of a year.
Okay, so we make an argument about how forcing black people to do resolutional debate is bad. Why does the read card apply to this?
What's the warrant for that?
Oh, the warrant is because they think it's bad, which causes
you think it's bad. That's just our argument.
Yeah,
You've expressed a profound racial truth that you say speaks for all black people.
It doesn't. I'm saying that some black people think
then
it's bad.
Then how do you know? You've interviewed them?
North Star, Lane Tech, us. Like, what do you
Okay,
saying?
so there's like these 10 black people think the res is bad.
Not
That's
10.
your argument?
Well, no.
What about all the black people who don't?
I agree. There are some black people who don't think the resolution is bad.
Yes.
So I'm asking, how did we universalize black experience?
That was a universalization of black experience. The fact that black policy debate exists
that's fine.
shows
fiat. Why is it good?
Fiat? We criticize. Like, what is fiat? What do you mean by that?
Hypothetically imagining that Trump does
That
something.
action is good for organizing demands and tactical engagement for students. We have specific evidence in the context of black immigrants that's necessary to plan out political strategy in the future, how to mobilize and strategize for actions, and how to organize at a large scale. That's good.
So
the idea that you say it's fiat is a huge nebulous reductionist idea. There's ways of doing debate that are productive, and something that we would have done it for F, so we flipped F.
So you agree that hypothetical imaginations are good?
Hypothetical imaginations?
Like future planning.
We don't know what you're talking about here. We say that there's organizing demands that plan can do. That's a good strategy. Governmental analysis is good. The idea that hypothetical ideas that can't happen, sure, we disagree with things that can never happen.
What is the government?
What's the government? I think those Army Officer School says that, Dictionary of Government and Politics says it's the federal government based in Washington, D.C. Three branches, executive, judicial,
What is that made
Congress.
up of?
What's it? What do you say?
What is that made up of?
I said before, executive, judicial, Congress, the Constitution defines that. What did you say?
What is that made up of?
Obviously, right now you're trying to get that it's made of the people.
I'm just asking.
It's made of governmental structures. Like, we've read specific evidence about this. Can you disagree? Like, give a different kind of analysis.
The judiciary and executive are made
Congress,
of governmental
the structure of U.S. government.
Okay.
It's most predictable. It's the reason why the resolution says United States federal
capitalist
government.
accumulation explain the AF?
Explain the AF. When you say that there's a link between the form of violence that happens in the U.S. and exported internationally, we say that's where capitalism undergirds the 1AC's analysis. It's the form of violence that interlocks the separation between the color line and immigrant violence that we say that explains it better. The idea that the color line can explain all black immigrant violence is something that's wrong in order to forms of exploitation that exists. Before the 2AC, can I run to the bathroom?
Yeah, I'm gonna get some water too.
Nick,
What? I got it.
Wait, we have a water. We have actually unopened water. Let's say you that we make this discussion. Let's be spat.
Yeah, we beat the shit.
No.
Would you do it?
You're so good. Yeah, you have control.
Yeah. I have all.
But the condition is that we get one each. Each of us gets one coach. I pick Clark.
I picked Shree. He was the little Asian kid that played Smash all day long.
Clark's played Smash. He's a cool one. I see.
We'll see.
Was this for us, or is it just? It was. Wow. I'm excited to see what it turns into.
Yeah, that'd be pretty. They're probably gonna be like, "Oh, it's 1-1. Unburned is good."
That's what you're gonna do, dude. What?
You pathologize. What?
You think that's funny?
That's it. Apparently, you think that's funny.
Hey, there's a hot mic.
There's a hot mic. Canes.
Canes after this? Let's
Canes.
book the Canes.
Yeah, let's go to Canes.
Let's book the Canes. Canes is so hard to get in.
Is this mainstream?
Dude, let's play poker. Remember when
we actually are. I'm not even kidding. Don't say that. We actually do.
Are you playing this too?
Yeah.
Oh, like,
well,
probably.
No.
2 minutes.
Why not?
It's just because I'm gonna chill with you. I'm sorry.
We leave at 4 a.m.
Really? That's brutal.
Where are you?
Oh, I guess.
Yeah, where are you?
We're just leaving tomorrow morning, whatever. We haven't opened one already, dude. What?
He's a little bit more.
Nick is the winner? I'm sorry.
Before I start, like everyone else, have a couple thank yous. First to my family, my mom, my dad, and especially my grandma. She loves debate so much. I know she filled out a bracket when it came out last night. She also stalks all the judges on Tabroom, which is just incredible for anyone, especially her. Also, thank you to the TOC committee, along with the University of Kentucky for hosting such a great tournament over the years. To our coaching staff, specifically Kegs, Allison, Zahir, and Jeff. You all were incredible, and then most importantly, Shri. There's nothing that we could do without you. You hold everything together, make sure that we don't fall apart. Also to the RKS family that sort of taught me different styles of debate, so DSRB, DB, Charles, Corinne, and everyone over there. Thank you so much for dealing with me. And then, of course, MBA. We've had so many good debates over the years, and it feels like it had to, end this way. It's also been great, outside of Brown, hanging out with you all. And then, of course, George, like he said, best friends since, childhood. We have done everything together. I don't know what it'll be like to not debate with you next year. We'll see what happens. I don't know. But you've been incredible. Yes, you're hard to deal with sometimes, but the good definitely outweighs the bad. I sent the twos. The order is case, the critique, and then T. There's an overview on case before I do one off.
One second, can I hold that?
We all good?
I haven't got pulled up yet.
Oh, no worries.
Wi-Fi.
Is it Kaden from?
Yeah.
It's real slow.
That's good.
Still loaded. Let me try it.
Okay. Did you see Endgame?
Oh, dude, I have it written down for my turn.
Wait, have you seen Endgame?
No, don't.
Oh, it's so
Have you actually seen it?
It's
Yeah, we saw
You
this.
say you need to go. Was I right about this?
You saw Endgame?
Yeah, we
it's
saw
so
Thursday night.
good. Oh, you don't understand.
Yeah, it made me a flash for me.
Do you don't need me to get it. You got it though.
Yeah, I got it.
Sorry, I just need to check the flash drive.
Yeah, you're good.
Don't want to hurt my computer. Okay, we're good.
Okay, is anyone not ready? Yep. The problem of the 21st century is the problem of the car line. This iconic quote from Du Bois still rings true in tie finals of the 2019 TOC. The car line is the restriction that demands black population's immigration status to maintain the fragile glorious white legality in the United States. That's Amar, not evidence is an action abstract on black diaspora. The subject of psychic alienation is they are deemed unworthy of belonging regardless of rich, poor, light or dark. Off-ballot remedies two things. First, Afro-future. The 2-1-C has no game on it. Debate is about competing imagination to be realistic. Demand the impossible. Endorsing the 1-1-C's invitation to the gangsta nation for a diaspora is black scenario planning that lets us remix the social contact to establish institutions imbued with the ethos of all black everything. That's a Stevens and Vivian evidence. Ballots do not reach remedy all structural fairness, but they can endorse the desirability of introducing black freedom streams into immigration debates to challenge the Carline's second debate about debate. MBA posits debate is an isolated, simplistic game where students are interested in producing knowledge but can't see the relationship to it because research is presumed to be divorced from subject formation debate as the research process that has predictable, regurgitated expert opinions negotiated by participants in advanced distances ourselves from academic departments that demand scholars come to new conclusions from their situated sets of rubric evidence. The TOC finals is not the place to make another yes-no question on the court's counterplan to divide new norms to make debates knowledge production relevant to the associates outside of the game, or else they threaten the existence of the activity, which is the only intrinsic good to actualize all their framework arguments. The line blind, they say that we read the songs the way that the songs isn't about just like reading them and presenting them, but rather make arguments that all the loopy ass stuff about imagining the USFG as black people controlling means that the commodification argument, there's no warrant for it. Worse, it's ineffable with this read evidence that they read the performance that George did at the top of the one I see proves that there's different textures to blackness. We don't essentialize it. There's no link because we imagine a future where black people have control over the levels of power. Didn't say that you didn't say that there was one exclusive definition. Also, you can talk about anti-blackness. That was just not a link argument. The ballot currency argument, two answers. One, the ballot is good. In this instance, it proves that sort of the method of the one I see is to consider this an invitation is a good strategy. Second, it's key to liberation research. A team to test our arguments which internally turns all their clash arguments. The concrete immigration argument, link turn, remixing is macro politics that imagines a federated blackness for corrective government and safe conceited imagination over macro politics as the only pure of white leads to our next. Also, this argument doesn't make sense because it doesn't allow for Afrofuturism. They say reducing restrictions. We solve this. Remember, the one I see consider this an invitation to my gangsta nation. They say that the last piece of evidence they read, we solve both the color line and sort of the violence that occurs to immigrants. That was the one I see consider this an invitation to my gangsta nation. The K. The critique notes makes no sense versus the app. All the link stories about engaging the state being good. That's obviously what the app did all in the case. Permutation to both black nationalism is a liberatory fantasy that narrates black collectivism and opposition to capitalism based in materialism. A Cero breaks to defendant federation but lines with quote the Bolsheviks saving the color line instrumentalized blacks as commodity and labor, distorting them as in accordance with global calls for well beyond anti-terrorization towards overthrowing neoliberal death wards that authorize environmental destruction and exploitation. No sovereignty wall. What can black communities opposition to capitalism? The body was influenced capitalist black and labor black community algorithms mostly in accordance with global calls for well beyond reconciliation. Economics, culture provides all humanity cares race Marxism on imagining combining the street black intellectuals what essential black possibilities sensitive black chauvinism revolution realities amongst position black people politics value places some lights of the British death wars increase the environmental disasters begin polarization slavery neoliberal go their towns articulating nuance of life and work against the usual charge for black life new imaginary so they begin with the language all good source of justice articulated black people repeatedly placed on the lower song of the ladder language of trust requires a constant revision link term performance of all black everything motivates youth to challenge capitalism encompassing in the 11 corporate media attempts to marginalize sources of economic power almost entirely that's the reason why corporate media play type of dumb down audiences that is most delivered all black everything is difficult and MDB to perpetuate that from black youth imagine black people to requirement and people intellectuals of the then politics organizing the way that the instruction destructive system all black everything is a playground for thoughts and not in the European and culture communal society social and who would never indigenous people in the spaces as a collective because social societies needed no way to invent the life of the term they lived in classroom children and indoctrinated with these lines of instruction does not have to be vain abandoned European concepts the vision will be followed by political action claiming necessities of war and hip-hop is acquired unlike you the mentality representative revolutionary action it can't solve the case two levels one it can't explain the color line racial alienation can't be remedied by redistribution of material goods but operates at the level of emotion white cops who assume a rich black Harvard professor is breaking and entering into his home proves classes and transitional dialectics and second it can't solve violence in debate, the outsiders of the color line in debate, which requires exceeding materiality. The fact that policy versus critique debates are called clash of civilization proves all of our arguments. The extinction argument, we outweigh the color line is found in the flesh, and so here we also solve violence to immigrants, and there's no reverse cause for the root cause of economic redistribution can't solve their impacts. T. Debate is a scholarly competition, but the game is an intrinsic good sense of pedagogical merits. That's where we bring the evidence. Prior faithfulness to shared rules to preserve a balance. A class that distills provisional judgments on the quality of debating without passing final judgments on the positions not neutral, but a disposition to power. Their presumption that black students get to negotiate topics in advance and now play in bad faith to cut and run from the topic pauses the color line that ensures alienation in debate. Cast the ballot for spoils black that creates new racial constraints. The lack of black judges because of MBA practices means that linguistically competitive is skewed. Graziano in 14 the game and distills outcomes move on to transfer reality gamification is dominant force of practice society is thankfully the more false and the prescribing inclusion of substance, the sports lord, not the false player, the chief of sport player, cares the play where we're trying to the reality of the play where the temporary shot. Without the gamification demands the inevitability of social marginalizing who don't acknowledge the martial shark can play to spend paraphrase from shorts which I do, which takes actualized freedom of things versus share meaning create, and it gets process which people become meaningful to each other. We mean invitation to my gangsta nation is our commitment to compromise. Non-black students must practice double consciously repeatedly in 13 characters that black people sue white people, but white people disavow police associations, supposedly common spaces, code switching our commitment to compromise. We are charged with to be intentionally intellectual within debates specific framework. This is not a total rhetorical difference. Often white people people co-choice double consciousness or not. Blacks must be practiced. The point is not to trick one opponents, assume they all communicate in the same way, then blame black people for not committing the appropriate manner to soothe the anxieties. Black people are intellectually adopting from thinking about black language, and debaters are trained ground for liberation across communities and debaters are shaping politics marked by blindness or radically acceptable by black law are various education black to signifying theory regarding counter-interpretation, topic associated defenses of USFG reducing restrictions on legal immigration to the U.S. Theo Knox and 14 topic center versus topic associated could be applied to debate about topic center approaches their sources clearly identifiable, utilizing linear progression of information and topic associated speakers have implicit themes and anecdote associated rather than linear description. The difference could lead to one believing that one debate is the topic and that others in both sides would lead to topic and then limits the speech actions to not produce new intentions but shapes. The speech will meaning exercise the boundaries of the association causes the intent to misinterpret the words and benefits that allows a new narrative space for black experiences. Issues alter inequitable representation for those who are not black. First is black definitions. Lubin Stevens say the USFG should is the federal government whose constitution is written by Du Bois. Marinot says reducing restrictions on legal immigration or cultural regulations precluding legal immigration status. The next is game jamming. Topic-centered approaches preclude new narrative spaces for black students as agents of sovereignty instead of restricted victims. That's the Van Veen evidence. Letting black students be completely themselves in hostile spaces energizes agency, which is an intrinsic good. Their new aspect argument breaking new does improve. We elevate competition as a primary incentive because we don't deny strategic considerations. Counter-interpretation, new aspect that must be up at the end of debates. On-flight decision-making and our critiques of TOC come first. The predictable limits and clash arguments. Black stasis, topic association is a free-for-all based on relevance. Dylan Knox says it's a speaking style that uses implicit themes and anecdotal association rather than linear plan text to reach a conclusion that the USFG should reduce legal immigration restrictions. This provides a role for the negative with targeted clash over immigration and LPR bad. This proves that we don't turn accessibility and they contest our method. Linguistic standardization is perceived to be unfair. The ballot remedies competitive equity for black participants. See shield anything high standard debaters starts to provide for argument the word. The rules of government the most desirable judges ensure that only those willing to adapt to leadership to become experienced competitive debates and restrictions. One can be said in linguistic norms. Argument debater may fear judging the loss of substantive mark being deviant. The norms of success debate entails forcing thoughts and official language required fluency, negotiable, standardized English debate as a game of the best performance academic discourse when returning from the time to coordinates making any fair use of languages the law discourse of style and substitution debate limiting the number of African American predictions black English as speakers have experienced implementation black debaters so much meet the linguistic sophistication. This allows for more competitive edge to rest on the use of standard English deep in palatial bias. The refinement arguments which is their Anderson evidence the ground above proves that you can refine it. Truth testing is anti-black and assumes that black debaters arguments are the false from the onset of communication. Exclusion is not unethical. You have made the choice. You have made the choice. They see that individual rounds don't affect us. While one round may not change what we think over the course of time, making argument changes how we see the world, even if not, we have a critique of their form.
That's also not true in the context of TOC finals.
Yeah, that's also not true in the context of TOC finals, where it sets precedent. The ballot arguments. The ballot doesn't have to remedy all structural unfairness, but establishes a model that remedies the procedural exclusion of African American vernacular English here, and it shouldn't be remedy competitive imbalance if their impact turns through their desirable is unfavorable. Clash can't turn the case because it doesn't allow for black linguistics in the first place. Their Anderson evidences about Robinson's analysis promoting ignore for scholarly disposition may be in consideration and ignore by definition had I tried to settle all question whether having an argument that double assumption that Anderson study seems to reject. The Robbins card is marked at reject. I'll send it out.
I'll wait for you to do that.
Yeah.
Reject. Yeah, but
Right,
next
yeah,
time
you're
doing
good.
it. You good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to ask you serious about your counter-interpretation.
Yep.
Yes or no answers. Can non-black debaters read a topical plan in the counter-interpret?
Of course.
Okay. Let's say the Dillon Knox card says implicit themes and anecdotal association.
Yep.
If I describe my personal relationship to immigration anecdotally, don't explain what political action. Is that implicit themes and association?
No, because it doesn't end. The endpoint. Even you use
Why
those
is an
implicit.
endpoint
Wait, let me
necessary
finish.
with Dillon
It
Knox?
uses the implicit themes and anecdotal evidence to have an endpoint of reducing restrictions.
This is a double turn with Dillon Knox. It says that linear ideas of progress, that the idea that there should be one solution to problems is bad. Why is there one solution, as you just said at the end of that?
What?
Yes.
The counter-interpretation says that you can use anecdotal or implicit themes, like that you want to see as performance, playing of music, and reframing the USFG to have an endpoint of reducing restrictions on immigration.
Is it federal government reducing restrictions on immigration?
It is reducing restrictions on legal immigration.
So what restrictions does the plan reduce? Which one?
Well,
all of them?
it doesn't have to be a specific restriction.
Not a specific one.
Remember the one I
What types
see.
of
Remember the one
restrictions?
it is an invitation to my gangsta
This is very
nation.
important. You say that there is an endpoint of reducing restrictions.
Yes, it is
I
an
want to know how and
invitation
why.
to my gangsta nation. Niggas.
George said this in cross-section of the one
Why do you know you should reduce those restrictions? Why?
What?
Why do you know they should reduce
Because
these restrictions?
niggas should have an invitation to my gangsta nation.
Okay, let me ask a couple things about this type of Afrofuturism. Last year against Ben and Eden in Michigan finals, you read a radical Plan F that called for abolition of the federal government. Is that Afrofuturism in your model?
Is that
Radical plan?
Afrofuturism?
We didn't read a radical plan.
Yeah.
A radical Plan F.
No,
is that in your
it
model?
is not.
Why?
Because it does not say all black everything. in this
Why can
instance, the
teams that don't say
Afrofuturism that
black,
we are
all,
defending,
everything, not the
because
Afrofuturism,
in this
because
instance, the
world change.
Afrofuturism that we are defending is all black everything.
also-
That is
black
different than
everything.
any
What's that
af
mean?
that we've
Wait,
ever
what's
read
the
before.
definition of
Julian,
that?
don't
What's that
misunderstand
mean?
what George is saying. It's not an exclusive definition of where the Afrofuturism works. It's just like in this
You
instance.
just said that radical imagination of the government
That-
isn't sufficient because it's not all black everything. What
And-
is all black everything?
Wait, what?
Yes, that's what you
I
said.
said it gives political agency to black folk, i.e., they
does
control
that
the levers
mean?
of power. It is all black everything.
So your
black
interpretation
people,
is
everything,
the
all of them,
imagination
everything.
only that black people have the levers of power, not the reducing it in other means.
What?
You said that the federal government changing it as of the current system does not meet your definition of Afrofuturism because it does not result in all black everything, correct? That's the only
app is
definition
all
of
black
this.
everything.
Yes. Wait.
Okay.
It's Afrofuturism is not just we imagine a future. It has to be
Yeah, of
a
course.
targeted example at helping black folk to
Targeted
create
example.
a
What's that mean?
Like
You
it's
said
something
that's
to
an
help black
invitation.
folk.
What's targeted about that?
What do you mean? What is targeted? I mean,
What
like
is
it's like
targeted?
in this instance, we have defended Afrofuturism as all black everything.
Okay.
It's like if you read
Let's
other
talk
evidence,
about
it's like
this.
Afrofuturism is something else. Then we will respond.
Afrofuturism is not a double train with the other impact. You said they lead to a debate about debate. How is that possible in a world of Afrofuturism?
Because
Can you imagine
the-
a change
It's
in
an
the
impact.
structure of debate?
Well, it's first of all, it's an impact turn to your T argument.
That doesn't make sense. So can you imagine changing the levers of power?
Because
debate, for
do you know what the
example?
word
Is
for
that
the debate
topical?
about debate is? It's the
Yeah.
Reed Brinkley card in the 1AC.
Wait, no,
That
let
is
me
an
be
answer
clear.
to framework.
Can you imagine changing the levers of debate? Is that a topical?
Changing what is the levers of debate?
That would
All black-
just
all
changing
black
debate
debate.
wouldn't meet our interpretation because
You're
everyone
lost,
has
bro.
to.
You are lost.
No.
756.
No, we
Oh,
have
no,
956.
956.
Restart, yeah.
So stop at 8:15. Can I just,
How much?
8:15.
8:15.
Yeah. My internet cut out too, so can I just flash it to you, Giorgio, when you send it out?
I don't have internet either. So.
Oh, does everyone? Does
I have
everyone
internet. I have internet.
Hey. Oh, I have internet now.
All right. Before we begin, I want to echo Julian's thanks. He named a lot of the people that are really important to our being here. The MBA administration, TOC organization that set up all of this, our coaches, all of the seniors who are here just grinding for us through all of the elimination rounds, and all the people who aren't here who graduated from MBA who kept G-chatting, asking what they could do always. My parents for supporting me. I couldn't be here without any of those people I named. Julian, we've had a wild ride. 2 years ago, we were at the TOC, and then a year of absence, but I'm glad we got to debate together this year. And of course, no, bro. We're truly in the end game now. And I wouldn't have it any other way, so here's to a good debate.
Which doc is
It's
it?
Truancy Ave.
Truancy Ed.
Is it on there?
Is screening impact?
Screening impact?
Not the screening impact.
Not see high school.
That would be in the 1 and R.
I don't see it on
Okay,
there.
sorry. I'll
Do we see HSI slow?
That's a classic.
The order is just frame rate, by the way. It says it's on there. Let me,
Maybe I was looking at the wrong. It's like Lexar D or something like that, right?
yeah, I'll try one time.
Yeah, I can send it out.
Okay, do you have the, yeah.
I think I have it. Is it called Truancy Ev?
Yeah.
Okay, I sent it out.
You sent it out, okay. Wait, I don't need it. They sent it out.
Oh.
But like, I haven't gotten it.
How many cards are you reading? One.
Let me know when you argue.
How I fight.
You good? You-
No, yeah,
I think Nick's
give me
sorry.
If 10 more seconds. Oh, there we go. Let me get that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's on the flash drive too, if you can. Okay. Everybody good? Debate is a game where the ballot makes provisional judgments of the quality debating without casting a final judgment on the position themselves. Resolution exists as a final consensus on immigration rather than an imperfect proposal to ensure balanced class. There are two impacts versus class. The resolution exists to facilitate argumentation. There ensure less the app change the topic post hoc to avoid tactical negative engagement. Craft their advocacy to avoid the possibility of being flawed. That's key to debate. Self-delivered model that forces the resolution of targeted specific question, generates argument development, info processing, identifying the strengths, the weaknesses of positions, and persuading listening people you don't agree with. Any link towards the case because there'll be bad advocates or black futurism outside the space because they haven't rigorously defended it. Second is fairness. Competition subsets every decision we make, which means only we have a debate keyword. Argument engagement is an intrinsic benefit to debate as a competition, but their structural impacts exceed the transformative capacity of any one round of voting. Will leave you with a good feeling in your mouth, but will have no capacity to materially change the world outside the space. Both sides are clearly going off the bat, proven by their strategizing pre-round, breaking 3 new apps at the TOC just today to get the ballot. Every time they say fairness isn't an impact, you should remember that they are allowing you to judge this round fairly, and they can't separate themselves from procedural fairness. The role of the judge in the ballot is to vote for the team who did the better debating. Anything else is arbitrary and infinitely regressive. The line blind. Yes, debate is a scholarly committed activity, but that is all undergirded by competition. We are all here for different reasons, but one, those are undergirded by an incentive to win. Otherwise, we wouldn't go for camp to 7 weeks, or we wouldn't break through apps, which proves that competition has to come a priority to the education that we prioritize because it's necessary internally to the pedagogy that debate produces can only be channeled when competitive incentives line against one another, i.e. when there's a competitive incentive for the negative to prepare against a well-prepared opponent. They say it's not neutral, it is neutral. The ballot does not say the 1AC is true. Rather, that is a bad method for deliberative forum because the judge should base it off the arguments made in the debate. Anything else collapses debate as a sphere because the whole point of the ballot is to render who did the better debating. Otherwise, it's just who can present the better truths. And they say color line, that'll be in the 1 and R. All of their evidence says that it's located within the national border, which proves one should necessarily beget a consideration of the other, which proves the TBA solid. They say lack of black judges. We ran the data. We had more, if not the same number of black judges as them, and we can send the data out after the debate. But the fact that they categorize black judges all having a universal perspective will be criticized in the 1AR. The Graziano evidence, this is the wrong understanding of play. Play only becomes meaningful insofar as there is agreed upon constraint. Otherwise, there's an incentive to cut and run from the margins to take non-controversial positions to strategically neck positions. Accepting those terms of debate are necessary for there to be an incentive to prepare in itself. Topicality is not a call for you to constrain yourself, but rather it's a critique of the 1AC's refusal to be tested. They don't meet the definitions will be below. They say double consciousness. Framework does not necessitate a certain style of speaking, a certain style of approaching politics. 2 arguments here. First is that debaters can advocate for politics any way they want outside of debate, but we think it's valuable to learn about the structures while we are in here. Second is that saying things and arguing for things you don't agree with is a productive exercise. Think of Malcolm X, who went through the arguments of white racists in his head so that he would more adequately argue against them in public. That is kind of the model and the creative thinking skills that our model inculcates. There is no white or black debate. This will be criticized in the 1 and R. The topic is not the same thing as process counter plans, and they're thinking that it is kind of represents a lack of creativity that Nobo approaches the topic with. There are ways to reinterpret fiat within the bounds of the resolution that allow for untraditional styles and critiques of normative politics. The counter debate, they don't meet this interpretation. If just mentioning immigration is enough, then that explodes limits and will link to all of our offense, but they clearly have no association with the topic besides the fact that they've outlined something that occurs in immigration, but their advocacy has nothing to do with it besides maybe stopping detainment after we've imagined stuff. It links to all of our offense. First is limits. The no one is illegal movement, the Sans Papier movement, the undocumented black movements, and countless other movements relate to immigration, but ask and simply endorse those movements out prescribing a specific advocacy that is tied to a stasis point, which massively exposes the affirmative and destroys the negative ability to repair. Second is ground. None of those apps are inherently uncontroversial and have no controversy of literature. The resolution was chosen because of literature controversy. They arbitrarily choose another stasis point. Third is predictability. None of their evidence is written in topic precise wording, which means it's only a question of what can guide AF and neg prep. At best, their debate solves debate for one debate, but it's a question of models of debate for a whole year. Think about this debate if it happened 10 times. First time we lose on reading framework bad, then we prep a case neg about some scholars who disagree with their method, then Nobro says that their method was never universal, and then we prep another case neg, and then we might win 1 out of 10 debates, but the ones say that their method was only for debate, and then as soon as we win a debate, they'll just rewrite their 1 or C because there's no tether. The lack of any tethering makes it so they can gain extra topical advantages and shift every single time. At least the resolution allows us to predict those changes. They force neg teams into radical structural critiques in order to find a point of contestation, but the infinite prep that AF teams have to prepare means that they'll always beat those radical critiques. Debate is a game driven by competitive incentives, which means any model that can't take that into account is naive and co-opted debaters who want to win, which means we don't have to win, they make debate impossible, just then they make it slightly harder because the top level debates are won on the margins. They say USFG is the federal government. The 1NC evidence says that the federal government is the executive, the judicial, and the courts. Obviously, we have definitions that might conflict, but it's a question about what's best for debate. The cultural recognitions argument, only we are reading evidence that assumes restrictions on legal immigration as a term of art, which guides specific research and method advocacy. That's a task of evidence. They say topics center around agency. The 1AC Crossix said that political agency is a way to galvanize energy, which proves that resolutional debate is not mutually exclusive with galvanizing black energy. Energy in itself is not intrinsically good, and it's kind of the frame of this debate because we don't think that motivating oneself is good absent a sustainable mechanism to actualize that energy. They say new ads, we're not going for this as a reason to check the team, but it just proves that competition will always rear its head. So you should orient a model of debate that can kind of allow for those competitive incentives and then reorient themselves to something greater than ourselves. They say black stasis point solves. This is kind of unverifiable and goes to most of the arguments that will be in the 1NR. It's impossible for us to say that this was not predictable for Giorgio or for black debaters. Rather, that is why an external constraint is good. The ability for an AF or the neg to determine what the other team says in a game that is dominated by competition is inherently dangerous, which is why we should have an external constraint in the form of topic wording. And also, saying the resolution is bad is not offense, because saying the res is bad is 50% of the debates, which proves that reading their critique on the negative is a more radical way of incorporating their arguments. They say the de-shields arguments debate might be saturated with bias, but you should ask yourself why voting affirmative solves it. We have critiqued this kind of spectacularization of the ballot that they think solves anything. Nobody changes their mind after this round, and nothing changes absent our understanding of the immigration system. This is an elitist perception of the ballots because it assumes that like teams who only win are the only ones that can have change. Our argument is that the long-term process of debate is the only thing that can actually mobilize change. Seeing ballots as a form of progress is bad because it allows non-black judges to displace their guilt by saying they voted for an argument but not actually pursue material action outside of round. They say truth testing. The argument is not anti-black. It's just that absent the ability to contest the 1AC around a stasis point, we haven't had the ability to research a strategy, so you should presume it false until they have done otherwise. They say making ARGs changes. We agree, but it's not one ballot or one round. TOC finals changes nothing, and the idea that it will make people less racist trivializes the entrenched bias. Rather, the world is messed up, but why it's messed up is far more complex than any one ballot can change. But analyzing those structures is a prerequisite to that. They say ballot is a model. We agree it's a model of debate. It's a question of whether that model can change us. They turn debate into a functional monologue where Nobro is lecturing us, but nobody learns anything because the unlimited topic means there's no incentive to prepare for specific apps, which means the radicalness and the education that is read by the 1AC is lost because there's no incentive or ability to prepare for every single 1AC. They say clash can't turn. That was just what I said above. Yes, clash does turn because 1AC Crossix said debate is an intrinsic good, which means maximizing that debate around the stasis point of the 1AC is also an intrinsic good. TVA solves the app. It's removed criminal context as a deciding factor once immigration status and increased immigration programs specifically for black immigrants. That solves loads of material violence. It's not a panacea, but it improves the conditions of black immigrants. Morgan Charles Hall, Zang 16. The overwhelming data racialized criminalization that immigration enforcement has an impact on the state of black immigrants. The immigration system is redesigned in favor of policy that shift the focus away from criminal context. Deciding factor, immigration status black immigrants have been disproportionately affected by the law. Congress forced and the criminalization of black immigrants through the rollback of punitive deportation, detention, policy, Congress should act, policy immigration programs. 1AC Crossix said that the move towards status and legality is a form of black futurism. The 1AC that I just presented could say the app was a form of black futurism that allows for black futures and read advantages about those movements and forms of sociality. They will say footnoting the creative reworkings of fiat allows teams to critique the generics by saying normative justifications for policy are bad or saying process focus is bad. that their counter-interp links to the last piece of offense because they have limited out some black debate. Because what about black debaters who don't want to talk about the resolution, which proves some limits are good? Think of a lawyer who follows unjust trial procedures to win a civil rights case, even if those procedures are bad, because they realize that following some norms in this space is net better to solve more suffering outside this space. They have no explanatory power for why we read framework against white POMO teams or policy teams we don't think are topical. It's also infinitely regressive because it means any repudiation of the 1IC's method is violent. We should be able to contest them.
Are we good? The last argument, or not the last one, like second to last one about counterinterpretation links to offense. When do we say discussing the resolution was bad?
No, you read a lot of offense about limits on speech and form
On
bad.
speech. On
Yes,
speech.
which your counter-interp links to because it provides some limit.
No, on speech in terms of the way that people communicate, i.e. things
Yeah.
like African American vernacular English, not the topic of the debate.
Yeah. What
Why
about
is that?
African American vernacular that doesn't have to do with immigration? You've said in cross-ex that you exclude that.
What do you mean doesn't? What is African American vernacular English
So like,
that doesn't have to
so
do
like,
with immigration?
so like you've said that topic association is necessary, right?
Yes.
There's obviously like no precise definition of what that is, which is why it links to all real limits arguments.
The Dillard-Knox
But
evidence says exactly.
but
what it
what
is.
like obviously black debaters who don't want to talk about immigration, they are limited out under your model, correct?
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, which proves that kind of analyzing the specific way that restrictions go down or rules go down is a prerequisite to just saying rule is violent overall.
Wait,
You have
when did we make an argument that rules were violent?
the Graziani evidence says that and the last piece of evidence, the indictment of Anderson, both says that limiting and kind of holding certain norms is bad.
We've made it, all of our arguments are impact turns to the sort of way that you view speech in terms of what sort of form of adhering to like standard English. Where does that say that rules or norms are bad?
Well, it says a standardization of knowledge is bad. You have also done that.
There's obviously a difference between knowledge and standard.
I disagree because there's some knowledge that is not within your interpretation.
The sort of definition that you gave of the federal government as the three branches, why is that exclusive as imagining that black people have sort of power over the USFG?
I mean, it might not be exclusive. Like
It's not
as in like the app isn't topical, but we've said that a topical app could say that the USFG should do things specifically for black immigrants.
Wait, but so if we imagine that that black people have control over the federal government, that meets your interpretation.
No, because you haven't. I mean, for several reasons. First is that you haven't resolved says legislative forum. There's no legislative forum. Like you've imagined something, but you haven't actually defended a reduction of restrictions.
Explain, but as of right now, just like
Then,
the extension of
Nick, let me
USFG
ask you: what 212 ground of admissibility or quota do you lift? We'll read disads if you spec it.
Okay. The sort of ballot arguments that you make at the end, sort of what is it about this round that is necessarily that we have to remedy our offense if it's not just about models? So you're like, we say this debate
is
happens
about
like
models.
10 times.
Oh, you're talking about
exactly. So if it's about models, why does it matter sort of if it doesn't resolve all structural unfairness that exists within?
Well, I mean, we've said that both because our model does resolve structural unfairness is our argument, but yours doesn't.
What?
Because
the ballot solvency arguments are like,
Yeah.
oh, you don't solve for this instant. There's still other things that contributed to it.
Yeah.
It's like if it's about models debate and like we're setting a standard for what debate should look like in the future.
But like,
why doesn't
you
that
still haven't drawn the link between your model debate and solving things like white bias.
That begs the question of the counterinterpretation of resolving violence. I'm asking about the ballot because like we've just never understood these ballot arguments because like if the ballot is not a question of whether or not it happened in this debate, but about models of debate, right? So why wouldn't voting app say that our model of debate that allows for things like
So the argument is that a ballot does not change who we are as people, but it changes our approach to debate. So voting app encourages more chaos, but it doesn't change the people.
It changes our approach to debate.
Yes. Because there's an incentive to read chaos if they win, but it doesn't change the people's mindset who read the chaos.
Okay. No cards for the one and R. Yeah, it's the cap K then case.
Is there an overview anywhere?
Actually, there's a slight overview on case, honestly.
No cards then.
No cards. Okay. Is everybody good? Fantastic. They can see the permutation distance competition. They'll try to contemplate other arguments of framework, but those will be new and get new analysis. And the two and are the only argument that applies here is the energy argument. But the problem is a question of where they channel that energy that will be impacted out in case. The only other thing is the emotional forms of blackness. Because they've not read a structural condition of blackness, they have no way to explain why the entirety of blackness exists in a certain form that makes a libidinal economy. It's not a true desiring claim, but only a form of irrationality that means challenged through the structures that inform it in the first place. That means that those material conditions can change as well. In case proper, we've impacted the idea that Afrofuturism is alone to evolutionary energy. Afrofuturism is a necessary mechanism as their evidence to galvanize energy, but the key question is where do they channel that? It's not benign when Giorgio and Nick do not know what they imagine, who they imagine for, what immigration restrictions should they change. Rennick's impact turns this idea. There are already more than enough starting points, ideas, and forms of energy, but where do we challenge the color line outside space? How do we actually achieve all black everything? Only our model channels this energy by pointing out what institutions have changed, but their model's net back is at least a feel-good feeling that we've created ideas. What do they imagine? Do they change restrictions? Do they change the government? None of these ideas actually make sense in the context of how they achieve them. That's the core question of how they galvanize that action, because Afrofuturism is only good insofar as it results in that next change. That's the core question of the round. Ask yourself, does a black immigrant facing deportation focus first on imagination and Afrofuturism? Do immigrants fear ICE, deportation, and abuse? Imagination is not a strategy for these immigrants who aren't afforded the choice to be imagined in the first place. As students who can't afford the risk of action, we must mobilize in action. Georgia needs to draw the line between how Afrofuturism helps these immigrants before you say that solves every single form of violence. Otherwise, right-wing decide we have enough ideas but not enough action. That's Rennick. Students need to have forms of ideas in order to challenge the right-wing idea that the wall is necessary. Otherwise, they can't convince others to change their ideas of policy. Policy debates are key. One, it's necessary for spillover and persuasion. Details like how to avoid ICE, how to change legislators, and how to prevent the interpersonal violence can be done through debate. Counterplans like LPR versus temporary are necessary for immigrants adjusting the status. These are good debates for people to be having, but also only fights a failure policy debate that they should change over time. Second, macro political action is key. They valorize only micro resistance, only results in a form of serial policy failures. They result in the same actions that replicate violence in the first place. Only we have evidence in the context of a relationship between black immigrants. First is the Miranda evidence. It's fantastic on the context of why immigrant justice movements should do for black immigrants. Things like anti-border politics, like no one's illegal movements, have organized on an anti-state frame while still working through states institutions. That's what Afrofuturism should look like, to hold that form of revolutionary potential, but use that to specific wins in order to actualize their goals. Second, Palmer, read this evidence. Impact turns a false dichotomy between the color line writ large and for immigration. That's a false decline that prevents any possibility of movements growing between immigrant groups and anti-black forms of racism. Creates net-back forms of Afrofuturism when they unnecessarily exclude analysis besides things that create all black everything. We should be able to challenge what policies change, what type of ideas to have there. Movements like the Black Alliance for Just Immigration proves that undocumented black people currently use things like organizing demands as a productive form of Afrofuturism that galvanizes actions. That's what the 1HC should do as a topical plan, instead of just saying that we're an invitation to do action without knowing what that looks like. There are already people who have invited specific actions that people should mobilize around. The second impact to the 1HC's debates about debate. That's a double turn with all their analysis of Afrofuturism. When they say that the state should change, they cannot say the state debate should also change. That's mutually exclusive. Only debates should be a question of how we spill over outside the space, because single affirmation of resistance are impossible to debate against and verifiable, results to judge being the arbiter of whose identity is correct. That's uniquely wrong. All the people in the space can afford plane tickets, tournament fees, and hotel costs, and extensive coaching staff. This space should be about challenging our privileges and external structures. Three impacts. First is scope. System of power outside the space cumulatively affect more people, making their violence on much larger scale than the app's impacts on Giorgio alone. Second, it's external. At best, the app solves an independent form of violence in the sphere, but our method trains social justice warriors who are capable of deconstructing systems of class, environmental destruction, heteronormativity. That's all in the Robinson evidence that goes drop, which is external offense outside of anti-blackness. Third, root cause. Debate's not incidentally racist, rather reflects the assumptions of what we take from outside the world and processes of power. That means that you must challenge those structures first. The app directly trades off with this institutional analysis. One, we are impacting their active choice to only develop a strategy within debate that offers no framework, no blueprint, no method of engaging the broader structures outside of us. The 1HC has prescribed a problem in debate with a lack of imagination, and the idea that TOC finals should not be about counterplans, but no concrete plan about how they actually actualize their strategy for Afrofuturism. That's zero sum. Endorsement of broad philosophical theories that prescribe individual stances instead of pragmatic practice allowed to effectively displace our guilt by convincing that structures outside of us matter more. Second, their model of debate. Nearly all systems of oppression, anti-blackness, heteronormativity, ableism, social colonialism coincide with the federal government. That means that those challenges of the federal government is a necessary prerequisite to all of the analysis. The final argument is that essentialism is that the fact that Georgia had a narrative disproves none of our analysis. What we talk about is in Georgia says that the only form of Afrofuturism is imagining all black everything. That is essentialism. The vast premise of all their arguments that there's one truth of blackness reject that. First, they create a false consciousness where there's no black identity or black community, in the sense that they're speaking for class contradiction. The fact that culture is not a fixed, eternal inscription on people. Second, the notion that any black person can express a profound, controlling racial truth assumes that black people share a common mind, which is harder for racist ideology flipped on the head. Third, their freedom of identity says that speaking truth, self-care, and survival strategies that are not bad.
10 minutes.
new version.
$5.56.
Hey, fun isn't something one considers in balancing the universe.
I'm done with my high school career now speaking.
What? They clap for you after.
Oh yeah, you're.
Oh, that's
Bro, you have one more switch. Oh, maybe you come back next year.
Wait.
Well, you should hybrid these.
Hybrid.
Okay. Is everyone good for an arctic?
Yep.
Case D. Okay. Is anyone not good? There's an overview, but it's whatever. Topicality reinforces the color line that acts an asterisk on black teams more subject us to an external impact of psychic physical alienation. Topicality reinforces the color line by dynamic niggas temper the rage or indifference for the greater good of the debate community, or else they're unworthy of belonging. Their associates the color line to debate at the level for outweighs content because it's felt in the flesh, and so here the case is really behind this to make truthfully proven on topicality. After press of futurism indicts, we do know what we imagine. It's all black everything and immigration to my gangsta nation. It's your fault that you don't understand Ebonics because you are anti-black. They've dropped a black scenario planning that lets us remix the social contract to establish institutions to be with the ethos of all black that bring it solves. We never said it's exclusive. We said it is an example of Afrofuturism in this instance. All of their imagination strategy, imagination not a strategy stuff is bad. Fuck you. Your topical action stuff doesn't do anything either. It's a question of what would the world look like if there was an African or all black everything belonging, which does not answer all of the immigration good justice stuff. We don't preclude it, which I'll explain on topicality. The Palmer evidence about the false dichotomy between the color line and the border. One, our evidence says that we remedy the color line by focusing on the attribute of the immigration policy. And second, it's about the color line and debate. Obviously, we don't solve the border, but it's like, what would the world look like if it was all black everything? All of the skills arguments at the bottom. There's no reason why we do not solve any other skills arguments. Rejecting black fiat moves away from revolutionary imagination, which is independently bad, and I'll explain why we solve skills on the other page, but it also doesn't teach G. Nelson in this instance in the context of Trump. Learning about conflicting constitutions or legalese isn't intrinsic to debate and can be learned through AP Gov or mock trial. Nothing about infinite parole co-states to write out applications or fill out LPR applications. Also, T will prove that we could have had a debate that T shields creating clash and was good for debate, but to explain the last argument about the essentialism does how we don't link in and doesn't essentialize blackness. There are different textures of blackness, different speaking styles, etc., which does not answer topicality at the top. Debate is a game, but it's in the scholarly nature means clashes and intrinsic good sans pedagogical merit. The neutral presentation of inwardly refining arguments is a white fantasy of pure communication that forgets procedural equity happens at the expense of expunging rhetorical difference. So the teams like OU, CL who use Ebonics to argue war power's got to end against niggas are misread as niggers who cut and run from the topic and lack argumentative respect for their non-black proponents. The link does not turn the case. Don't hold us responsible for monologues when they refuse to rigorously engage black substance. Double consciousness to engage the armed corrupt film makes us better advocates with culture clashes. We solve fairness because they get ground trade-off dissets like GBN state budgets, Carrollton's new KDA, counterbloods defend temporary, not permanent residents, or black immigrants, or picks who collude black immigrants who violate specific and admissibility requirements. We are going for the ballot, so everything is irrelevant. Most of this page is going to be bad, but I'm going to explain the argument we are going for. We are going for we meet. The 2NC read the 2VA, then when the 2NC read the TVA was mobility loss. We meet because plan remove criminal contact and increase immigration for black people. In English is identical to the plan. Consider this as an invitation to my gangsta nation niggas. What could it mean to invite niggas if it wasn't for a federal reduction of restrictions on upon revenue for Afro diaspora belonging? The 2AC says we don't deny institutions but remix them by rematching the niggas populate 3 branches in DC to change the level of immigration status. It's their fault they read no DAs and have given immigration ground to my gangsta nation. Don't get it twisted. Ain't nothing vague or conditionality about this. We've been committed to compromise. That's Brinkley, the 2 hours pivot that uses the AAV's use of implicit themes and linguistic rules, puts them at the next mercy at the 2A of conceding links them. It's not neutral, but a product of refusing to coach it. Just because we don't adhere to white grammar conventions like keeping the USFG as the subject of the sentence doesn't mean we're deliberately tricking opponents. Started the Shields evidence. This was fucked up by Aiden in the 2 and C. Double consciousness is most for CJ Ferret's reciprocal exact code switch with non-niggas by answering arguments on the line by line, but they unfairly refuse to engage niggas on their linguistic ground because they falsely assume only their cultural vernacular is objective. The external impact is lopsided participation that disenfranchises black voices. Refusing AAV plans proves their framework not topicality because they regulate our stylistic choice as inferior and gut feeling like Zimmerman had gut. It's like gut feeling like Zimmerman had a gut feeling like Trayvon was hiding something impacted by the color line. In this instance, your TOC finals voucher overcut for the exclusion procedural unfair denomination of black immigrants. We have evidence that says this decreases black participation. Yes, a literal quote, and this is not written by a person in debate. We agree that the Shields card, the 1 year should not get a new answer to these evidence because what's current in the 2EC, the ballot does not need to remedy all structural fairness, but they can signal the desirability of inaugurating of Afro future. We do not need to solve biases about whether or not our model is good for black participants. Most in the 2EC is relevant. We are not going for you pathologized black debaters, unfairness good, predictability bad, class bad, etc. But we have made arguments and have evidence that is great in this question that says linguistic practices in this community are bad and are bad for a bunch of black people in this room that are perceived as cheaters and niggers that cut and run from the topic, which is problematic. Competition should not come first. We our interpretation is better for black people, but also we solve competition because we have black political competition. Anyways, extend the counter interpretation or extend the competition topic association. Black definitions impact turn expert third party intent to define because interpreting terms as USFG are already defining for close to black dollar association to prepare for Afro future and codes of granting controls like Luffy Yasu who imply implicit themes. The Malcolm X switch side debate argument can't be read on the negative because the black fear federal government is not competitive. We switch sides and say immigration depends bad on the negative. Black states link turns their standards. Association is a free for all where millions of personal experiences self-servingly reshape whatever your means or bottom up movements. Low docs regardless of land trans Latin or other embodiment finite topical statements is achieved over the conclusion that they role play as the USFG producing legal restrictions, but does not say that you have to say it in one language. We do meet our counter-interpretation because we literally result in reduction restrictions to an invitation of my gangsta nation. The predictability and precise wording stuff is impact turned by our counter-interpretation, and also all this stuff is relevant. Whether or not the USFG, we've reimagined it in this context, and we also redefined it in the context of how we say the United States federal government should reduce its restrictions. We didn't say it in the 1AC, but it's a justification for how they refuse to co-choice. We have the best pieces of evidence I've ever cut on this issue. It's like, this card is so fucking good, and it's not written by a debate person. Like, it's insane.
Y'all have 8:15, right?
It's 7:50 right now.
Can I run to the bathroom before the dinner?
Yeah.
Of course.
So, you want me to tell you Endgame's play?
You spoiled Endgame. I'm so mad.
Dude, my friend, like, some of the kids in our grade were being so annoying. They're like, no, this all happens, this all happens. I was like, oh my god. I have a question.
George, you really staring at us during at your iPad.
Stare you down.
Remember when that one kid, she had her name, but like slide into her pre-round?
Bro, who's that kid? Who's the kid that was in our pre-round?
Oh, yeah.
That's so funny.
That was yours, wasn't it?
Oh,
No,
no,
no, it's not like that.
it was like, oh, somebody made me. Who was it?
Okay. Is everybody good for an order? It's framework and then case. Is anybody not ready?
One second.
Sweet. Clash always, everyone comes to debate for different reasons, but we've all spent hours researching cutting cards in the universal belief that testing engaging with each other's arguments is good. The controversy debate is never the problem, but the solution. We all agree the color line is bad. The question is how we can retool our privilege and information to combat it. Resolutional debate forces repetitive institutional analysis against well-prepared opponents when we are forced to critically question methods of advocacy and update them in response to criticism. It's especially true for immigration because analyzing the complex system of visas deportation is necessary for defeating the structures. Debate between two well-prepared opponents with a strong incentive to beat the other is the only way that prevents a lecture. Their model debate turned no road into teachers and MBA into students with no mechanism for classroom education. The 1 hour was extrapolation of warrants that weren't in the TOC, so new 2 hour arguments were justified. It also was incredibly lippy, so hold on to our extrapolation. They say we expand rhetorical devices. T is not an attempt to expunge any rhetorical devices. First, they have conceded they have no explanation for why we read against white promo teams or policy teams we don't think are topical. Their counter expunges some amount of rhetorical devices as well, which means it's only a question of, because content exclusion is inevitable, it's only a question of that occurring along reciprocal lines. They say that we refuse to engage. No, it's that there was never a predictable stasis point to engage in the first place. They say that was ground. This ground was not obvious after the 1AC, which proves that their interpolation allows strategic shiftiness. They can see that traits will inevitably try to be shifty. It's only a question of whether there's a tether, i.e. a resolutional tether that solves that. There was no, these ground is concessionary because they have allocated what they think they can be pre-round. 1 sec, stop the timer. My timer didn't start, sorry.
You're at 342.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Which strategically limits our negative offense in order to read the game in front of them. The counter-interpretation proper and the we meet arguments. The 1AC, this is absurd. Post-1AC cross-6, they said that we invited reduction of immigration restrictions. Our whole argument, this whole debate, has been that specific process debates are good. What immigrants do they land in? What restrictions do they lift? That is the question that immigrants and activists should be orienting ourselves to, which proves that, one, defining terms of art is key to predictability. The task evidence defines it as a term of art and says that it's 212 in quotas, which they do not meet, which guide specific mechanism-based debates, which are important for advocates. Second is extra T. The 2AC, the 2NC says that they allow for unpredictable advantages, which is proven by their app saying that we fiat that all the USFG becomes ruled by black people, which is more than just immigration. It proves that they allow unpredictable advantages to strategically limit out negative offense. It's not white grammar because we've run there are creative ways to within the resolution, but those require defending a specific advocacy, which they have never done. They say to shield evidence first. They have dropped that with that ballots are bad as a form of progress because it allows non-black judges to displace their affective guilt and not pursue material change outside of round. We do not pathologize them. Rather, we are critiquing the 1AC's refusal to be included. There's no way they can solve the pathologization of black debaters, but they've conceded that those racist stigmas originate from broader structures, so we should orient ourselves to those. They say regulistic style point. This is infinitely aggressive because anything we said was bad about the 1AC is regulating their style. They say overcorrect. This is arbitrary because it's unfalsifiable to know how much we should overcorrect. They say black participation. It's word net worse for black participation because it allows big teams like MBA to break new apps, which exacerbate structural disparities and takes out the best K-links. They say ballot solves again. No one changes their minds. They change their approach to immigration to debate, so people don't become less racist. They just want to read chaos more. They say linguistic practice is bad. This is inherently falsifiable because we don't know what's predictable for one another. It's only a question of whether there's an external constraint on the resolution. They say counterinterpretation. It links to our offense. AC points limits allows us to interface with the topic without endorsing any single mechanism. There are hundreds of different approaches to immigration grounded in different identities or borders of thought. Second is ground. AF simply have to invite a course of action without defending it materially, which prevents the best form of research and strategies that are necessary for forming advocacy. Debates are won and lost on the margins. Means any reason to make it a little harder is a reason that you should vote negative. They can see the 2NC ran about shiftiness. Even if they meet themselves, they allow shiftiness in the future, i.e. both 1AC cross-6 to the 1AR, which allows them to say debates are only about debate, or their model isn't universal, which means the NEC has to rely on structural critiques, which can be permed and can be shifted out of in future debates because there's no tether point. They allow AF to say we support immigration without analyzing any specific restrictions. Yes, it can be read on the negative because you can critique status quo normative practice of immigration, which is the TVA, but the TVA is distinct from the app because it removes a criminal contact bar, which is a specific restriction that materially improves the lives of black people that are shut out from the United States now. Those debates that come about might limit some content, but net more educational because we have a stasis point. I ran with black stasis point. Again, this is unverifiable, and it's unverifiable, and our argument is that there is still ways to creatively reinterpret fiat within the resolution case. A series of infinite debates about debate have no material way to solve violence outside this sphere. They have said that black futurism is good, but no way to export that or materially change the political. It is good to have debates for black immigrants about the way that we will change the detainment process because navigating that structure, we need the political details necessary not only to persuade others, but also to analyze the restriction to come up with the best forms of advocacy. That's the Renix evidence. They can see that that's a prerequisite to exporting their structure. We are all privileged here, and they can see that's the root cause of assumptions in the space, so you should orient yourselves to those forms. Black scenario planning might be good, but in the abstract of the resolution of specific details, they have no way to navigate the immigration system and no way to export that black scenario planning. Only our model debate makes that black scenario planning effective. Debate is key because it's the only method in which we can come up with arguments and then innovate those arguments as people respond, which means the only way that we can learn and challenge ourselves to some broader advocacy outside this debate and make the model of debate and debate meaningful is to gather around resolutional debate so that we can analyze structures and then know how to defeat them. Their model debate trades off of that, incentivizes self-serving in terms of debates about debate without any method or pragmatic way to solve those.
Oh, we have 556. Yeah. But plans don't exist to hit everything. Yeah.
Case and then two.
Period. Period.
Love you too. Yeah. Okay. Let me get all of it out first. I'm sorry. No, it's like I'm sick.
I know.
I'm feeling pretty good. Okay. We all good? The TOC Finals inaugurates the inception of Afro-Future in high school today. Your ballot does not need from all structural fairness or racism in our community, but it can signal the desirability of black freedom dreams that establish a model that challenges the color line interior in finals. You should be realistic, demand the impossible, endorse the 1AC's invitation to a gangsta nation that remixes the social contract and established institutions and a debate can be imbued with the ethos of all black everything. Any risk of a link to the external impact of the color line outweighs demanding that black students temper their racial difference for the greater good of preserving clash, and the debate community enacts an asterisk on black subjectivity alienation is found in the flesh and soul here as George, North Star, Lane Tech, and others told that they don't belong. That black future should be procedurally constrained. The line blind, the debate about debate argument. We have a plan text that we are defending. It's not just an infinite deferral of debate about debates. You could have had a sweet debate about methods. You refuse to do that. They say change political. We change the political because we were defending a plan text and letting immigrants into the country. It's their fault that they didn't engage us in the process. But debate, you shouldn't blame us for their inability to read a plan. They say we're privileged. This is a relevant debate. Key argument: we solve for violence in debate by creating Afro-future for scenario planning. Topicality at the top. Debate is a competition, but its scholarly nature comes prior to its functionality. Fairness and clash as an intrinsic good is an anti-black fantasy that falsely assumes what linguistic norms establish the best balance for a diverse community where black participation is on the rise. TOC Finals come down to our commitment to compromise. You must read the 1AC and 2AC DSRB evidence along with the DeShields evidence. They have conceded they could win every impact argument on topicality about clash, research, iterative testing, but that is all irrelevant if we win that. Consider this an invitation to my gangsta nation is a subset of the topic. Remember things like 1AC cross-sex when they were like, what do you defend? And George kept saying, consider this an invitation to the one gangsta nation, or 2NC cross-sex when Aiden was like, we'll read this, and I said, okay, that's because consider this again, the invitation to my gangsta nation is a plan text in Ebonics that fiats the USFG reducing restrictions on black immigrants coming into the country. All of the topic dis as they get them. This was conceded in the 2-hour remittances, brain drain, state budgets, the Medicaid counter plans that defend temporary, not permanent, or critiques of topic inclusion. All of these arguments link just as well to an app like public charge or diversity visas or the topic of diversity app. As consider this an invitation to my gangsta nation. We should not be blamed for their inability to read a link to the plan text. We meet to be proper. There are 3 arguments that make the 2 hours answer to the We Meet too little too late. First is code switching. One MBA characterizes as vague or shifty as a product of their refusal to engage black vernacular. At no point have they contested the larger meaning an invitation to my gangsta nation has to communities of color. The plan text not adhering to white grammatical conventions, like keeping USFG as the subject of the sentence, doesn't imply cheating because they concede a descriptive claim from the one ear that their culture of vernacular is not the only objective. When policing definitions based on intent to define precision of the plan text or style-elected choices is anti-black, and it's akin to the Louisiana court that denied the right to counsel to a black man who said that he wanted a lawyer dog because there are no such things as lawyer dogs. Of violating the color line means that non-black students should err against assuming the intent of black folks and precision as a linguistic migrant. Second, they have dropped that double consciousness is procedurally unfair. This is an answer to the truth. You should read this Shields evidence after they made a technical concession that their understanding of language is procedurally unfair because black debaters are forced to code switch with them and answer their arguments on the line. Well, they have the luxury of not engaging black students on their own linguistic grounds. If black students didn't understand the technical language of their arguments, it's their fault. But if they don't understand us, it's not on them. This creates an imbalance. If debate is a game of inches, then that disadvantages black participants. And only about for the We Meet remedies all of this linguistic competitive imbalance. And here, even it can't remedy entire structures of racism. Third, their argument is framework, not topicality. That difference matters. Their answers to the We Meet and white students as the gatekeepers of language or blacks who conform to approve plan text like North Spared, while OUCL, North Star, and others must assimilate or exit the activity as cheaters despite just speaking a different dialect, which is impacted on the case. You should surrender your ballot and refuse to give in to gut checks and what you thought that the 1AC intended, because those are the very same gut checks that are life and death for black folks. They like the gut feeling that George Zimmerman had about Trayvon considering weapon. They've also conceded from the 1ER that we need new language ensuring to enhance participation by urban black students, and first student participation is a prerequisite to all of their arguments. Now I'm going to intentionally drop some arguments because those are all relevant. If we win the We Meet debate, I'll answer sort of their Noparstak teachers' arguments is your refusal to engage them means you, the teachers, and lecturing us on framework. They say that they read topicality versus white poem. Well, this is irrelevant because their model of debate is bad because it shuts out linguistic dexterity. They say the counter-interpretation is expunges exclusion. Even if it's a limit on content, it's not a limit on how black people can express themselves. The linguistic dexterity, they say that it's not predictable. I did that above. They say the ground arguments, they say that we're shifty. This proves that they refuse to code switch and only characterize black people as cheaters. The counter-interpretation all extended. If you don't buy the We Meet arguments, the residual offense outweighs topic association. This is the Knox evidence means that the end result is reducing restrictions, means that they get all of their ground, which solves all their clash arguments. They say specific process debates are bad or good. We read a plan text. You could have had the debate. Also, policy teams don't exactly say what restrictions they read in their plan text. Like us, also all of the sort of microaggression black participation arguments outweigh because they're a prerequisite to sort of getting those skills in the first place. Actually, topicality, you don't fiat black people into the government. It's a framing like when you read Gordon that assumes black people have agency. The ballot argument that is Shields evidence answers the guilty argument because it says that we're sort of remedying violence that exists in debate. Their argument would say that then change should never happen because it means that white people would just be guilty. They say we don't solve the station to solve models debate. Bid schools is their only answer to black participation. That is relevant because of things like Lane's Tech and North Star. Read on the neck doesn't solve because it's an app argument. The TVA we conceded it. It's the app. We have evidence that a specific year ballot in this instance show that ebonics and black vernacular is the fairest practice for the black participation in this community.
Congratulations to both teams. Getting to the final for the TOC is incredible and not anything I was ever close to. On a 3-0 decision, the affirmative.
Montgomery Bell Academy.
Incredible debate, really impressed. I vote on the We Meet. I think there's not an RFD I could envision that could explain why the We Meet wasn't sufficient from the 2ACU through the 2AR. That wouldn't especially link to the offense they extended. Specifically, they flag it separately, but code switching policing of language, the double consciousness, all developed from 2AC on. I think I'm sympathetic obviously to some extent of not seeing it or not recognizing it in some ways, and I could possibly envision some other remedies or things that you could have done. But the 2 and R, it wasn't obvious to me, is not a sufficient response. The concessionary ground argument, I think almost by definition can't apply to a We Meet. They listed a number of topic DAs and counterplans that you could have read that would all obviously be included in your interpretation, and that's to me distinct from saying something like you get the cap K maybe, but like their concessionary ground is your topical arguments. I think some things that I won't take all of these because I don't want to steal them, but I thought there were a number of places that were particularly powerful for me. One is actually the DSRB evidence from the 1AC. I think they played the game better is one conclusion I reached. There's a part of their evidence that kind of describes the habit in debate of praising debaters for their tricks, the tricky counterplan text or T interpretation, and more often than not, white norms of debate reward that in white debaters, but police it as cheating for black debate. And it seems like that's a similar tactic that if I were to say, hey, that's not fair, a little late breaking, not quite, would be an example of like I said, linking to that offense. The other would be, I won't talk about the DeShields evidence yet, but it was pretty good. I'll say that you kind of go for clash generally and detailed policy analysis specifically, I think almost as the same internal link to the same impact with the case debate. I think that kind of bleeds together in a not helpful way for you, but securing small but maybe meaningful victories and individual wins within the immigration system. I think their advocacy and method, in addition to We Meeting, might access that better. I think it might have the possibility of training debaters to become better advocates because things like black vernacular or code switching can improve the advice or counsel that advocates could give in this complicated or personal interaction with juridical institutions, be it deportation or other instances of police interactions. And while I think you could have been a little bit more explicit and direct about that, the powerful moment for you was kind of the, I want a lawyer dog anecdote that is an example of how their method or their kind of, certainly their advocacy statement would lead to more refined or better ways to make, as you say, advocate for people that are less privileged than debaters. I think that's a necessary injection that can be good. Like I said, I have some other things I could talk about, the spoiling the sports stuff, some of your TVA things, but see if you have questions after they go.
I can go. I'm in order. Do you want to go? I'll say that, these two teams right now have some pretty excellent debaters. Different moments in all of your careers, I thought each individual person has given one of the most amazing speeches I've seen a high school debater give. And that's huge kudos to all of you. Excellent job, excellent careers, all the best in anything you go on to excel in. I thought for the framework debate, the biggest question was the link. When the AF is pushing really hard on the We Meet, it needs to have a comeback where you say, you definitely don't for here are our 3 best link arguments. And I think that a lot of the debate, you're sort of presuming that they don't meet and then trying to extrapolate internal links to your clash impact. What was frustrating about the debate was the question of what the AF means when they say, consider this an invitation to my gangsta nation and all black everything, was not explicitly explained early in the debate and then defended a little bit more explicitly later. But the AF is asserting that they result in the federal government reducing restrictions on legal immigration. The neg is asking questions like what and who, what type of restrictions and who would be affected by them. But I think that the AF is slightly better on the in-round execution on the link debate, saying first, referencing in the 2AR the explicit cross-sex moments that are happening and couching them as places where you weren't getting it or we said you could read diss ads against us, and the explicit 1AR pivot move to say we are this thing, here is us defending it right now, what are you going to do about it? And I think that you didn't effectively re-raise in this debate. I think it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if you had read diss ads. I don't know exactly what would have happened, but that might have helped you in this debate. The arguments about shiftiness or lack of specificity, I think, aren't necessarily violation arguments or reasons why they don't meet, but I think internal link arguments that presume that there is a link argument, that they are not a governmental action. The impact debate of Clash, I think Clash is a useful filter for solving the impacts that the AF is trying to say are important. So i.e., if we had more Clash, we would have been better at solving the issue that the AF thought was important. But in this debate, the impact is that the language that we use in debates influences the psychic alienation experienced by black debaters. And I don't have a negative argument about what more Clash under your interpretation would do about that. And even if the AF doesn't meet your interpretation, I think that there's a chance that the Clash created by their interpretation would be a better avenue of solving that important terminal impact. And I think that the AF is also setting up a turn about why the negs clash is bad, because neg teams don't clash with the core AF premise about rhetoric, about how white debaters are unwilling to code switch, saying it's cheating to not have federal government as explicitly listed as the subject. And then finally, there was this gut feeling argument that wasn't explicitly answered that resonated with me by the end of the debate, because I did have a sense that there is something that's going on with what the AF is doing that maybe is unfair. It doesn't seem like in the 1AC they're giving you the exact answers you want. It doesn't seem like this is the exact type of plan text that that I might find in a different debate. But they're saying I need to actively fight against that gut feeling, and otherwise that can lead to different forms of violence. I think that Amar is probably going to go into more detail about what you could have done and how you should have approached this framework debate, but picking your points of offense and really focusing in on them instead of just shotgunning a bunch of different arguments would have been a better way to structure this framework debate.
So before I get into like the depths of my decision, I don't know you all very personally, but what I do know is MBA as an institution. And I think it is undeniable to anyone in this room that just over the past so many years, MBA has consistently been one of the best high school teams in the nation. And I think, you know, just seeing you all debate, seeing and knowing how much work everyone puts in, I think you all, you know, getting to this point is such a high accomplishment. And, you know, even if it's not the decision we all, you know, probably wanted, but I think it is just emblematic of just how probably the way that MBA works, what you contribute to it, just continues on this like legacy that you all are leaving behind and setting a way for the future debaters. So I hope you all continue on in debate if you're graduating in college. I think you did excellent. But I just want to say, I think, you know, it's a good representation of your school, what you all do in your team, and it speaks wonders to, I think, a lot of people in the community. You all, I know you're graduating, and I think it's just want to say, like you noted, you were in my lab at Northwestern. Been a long way. Don't even recognize you anymore. Like, you look so different. And it's like, George, no one knows if what you're ever talking about at any point in time. Are you serious? Are you trying to lie to us? Are you trying to trick us? You know, it's just kind of, you stuck out there, and it's been a long path for you all to get here, so congratulations to you as well. But, so with that being said, I will keep my kind of depth of the decision a little shorter. I'll write it out, full thing, so we can all kind of, you can go more in depth on that. But the brief of it is, I think the ultimate downfall for you all is that you treat this more as a framework style debate about top level impact analysis and you lose the T debating. You know, you kind of miss out on some of just the explanation of the limits, the grounds, and kind of the, like Theo said, the violation of it. The short thing that I think you all really could have hammered in on and focused in on was just developing your extra T argument a whole lot more than it is. I think, you know, if the frame and if the 2NR talks more about the affirmative and what do they actually do. I know it's like shifting, that's your like argument that they're not really tied to a stasis point. You know, I think a framing that's just like, the AF could be topical if it's just an invitation like to the gangster nation, But when the affirmative has that next extra layer, extra step of now all black everything, that is now the expansion, not within the immigration context of the topic, but to a much more wide variety of advocacy. And you get there in the 2NR, you say the one line that's just like, this imagination probably rethinks what the government insists on, but then you kind of just leave it there. And I think if you do a lot more explanation on the violation about what does it mean and why does that matter, not just for clash and the most vacuous of reasons about it being good for competition, but if you're just like, here is the ground we want, here's how, if you allow them to really reimagine how the world works, that is problematic. So, you know, for example, all of your disads are written under the current understanding of how immigration policies are responded to, how they work. If the app gets to just reimagine everything, like all black, everything, you know, that's kind of the part that you really want to contest. If they get to reimagine that, they get to say, you know, maybe your econ DA is based on this ideology of like diversionary war that doesn't exist under this all black everything mindset. Thus you don't get those impacts. You know, what are the disads you lose? What is the ground you lose? What is the case list of the apps they allow? What can they do? And just like that type of T debating that, you know, normally you don't have to get into on framework debates, but you always do on your T debates, you know, a policy debate when you think of a plan. That, if that gets in here, I think you're in a much better spot. But I think you're doing an excellent job on everything else. I think if you're winning a good risk of like the violation per se, I think you're in a great spot. So great close debate. Good job to everyone involved, and best of luck.
I'll just email you all my questions.
Mm-hmm. Please.
Congratulations.
Amar, you've been in the dumps, man. Fighting in the trenches.